Now, twice we see that this book is called the Gospel of Peace. In other words, when I read and I follow instructions and I meditate and I'm depending on God by His Spirit to explain to me and to lead me in the right direction, I can have peace, that this gospel is full of peace. It's not full of strife, it's not full of contention. If you follow the gospel, you will have peace. Now let's read that verse in Romans 10. It's in verse somewhere, 15. How shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings. Bring what kind of tidings? Of good things. This is the gospel that brings peace. In other words, whenever I'm troubled and I go to the gospel of peace and allow the God of peace with the Prince of Peace to work in my heart, I'm going to have what's my right in God, what's the right of my mind and my body and my spirit. I have the right to peace. Peace in the moments of greatest distress. And I have peace. And they'll ask you, aren't you worried? I'll say, about what? Our roof was rolling off into the ground. You know that story. Every rain, we had more roof in the ground. Now, I didn't have to pray for the will of God. I know the will of God is for us to have a roof that doesn't leak. I got that without prayer. And I'm sure that was right. But we didn't have any money. I don't know if you've lived without money, but we started without money. Wayne made $121 a month. $1 an hour. And so we had the children, we gathered at our dining room table, and every night we thanked God. We asked Him first for the roof, and we thanked Him every night that He's working on our roof. Thank God for a roof. And we had perfect peace. We got a roof coming. And my brother said, what are you going to do? He's in college in Texas. What are you going to do about your roof? I said, it's coming. And then a lady sent me a very large check, not enough for a roof, but large enough to be very appreciative. We appreciate every dime that comes into this is well used. But she called. I wonder what was I going to do with her money. And I said, we're going to put on a roof. And every night at the table, and Suzanne can tell you this, if she remembers. I thought today, I used to stand Joel in the corner. See, you can hear from God. He's the God of peace, and peace comes from hearing what God is saying. And one day I stood Joel in the corner. I was merciless too. I mean, you stood there till I let you not stand there. And the Lord spoke so to me, probably one of the first few times I heard, I didn't know, we didn't come from a religion where God spoke. Were you at that church? He said, standing with his nose out so he can see your example. Now I've heard from God. God's trying to say you're overdoing it. Now Joel's very well behaved even to this day. Suzanne too. But we prayed about that roof, and eventually, in addition to that check, we got an income tax return. Still, we don't have enough money, and then my brother called, and he'd worked for a roofer during college. He did everything, including ladies' bathrooms for a company. And he said, do you know what ladies do? I said, I don't even want to talk to you about it. And so he had been taking off shingles for a roofer. And he said, Wayne and I'll do that. I'm coming home for a week. Well, they couldn't get it done. They tried, but we have a large roof. Not a large house, a large roof. I don't know if you understand that, but drop by sometime, I'll show it to you. And they couldn't get it done, and the roofer called. We had arranged for a roofer to nail the shingles back on. He called, and he said, my crew's sitting under a tree that's so many dollars an hour, and I'd like to put them to work. Can I come to your house and put them on the roof? And I said, well, they don't have the shingles off yet. He said, don't give it another thought. We're taking those shingles off for you free of charge. Because the God of peace sent the provision of peace because we believed. Now that's what Romans said. Did I tell you that? Called it the gospel of peace. Now look at Ephesians. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. You know this verse in Ephesians, but you probably haven't noticed. Chapter 6, verse 15. Your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Do you see that word preparation? your feet shod with the preparation? God has prepared it, and you've got to accept it with your faith. You've got to find out what God is saying to you and accept it with it's prepared. The gospel of peace is prepared for you. It's been prepared for you. It's ready for you. But you have to receive it. Now it says the God of hope, because God has many different names. Just I have many different names. My given name is Rebecca, but nobody ever calls me that except, at medical clinics and at the driver's license bureau and all those, and you become your official self. But Mother intended me to be called Becky Sue, but that didn't happen. Even though we were a Southern family, it should have happened, but it didn't. They quite quickly dropped the Sue, and I just became Becky. But every now and then, Aunt Millie would call, and she'd say, see, Aunt Millie didn't live here, and she didn't know that things had changed, and she'd say, how is little Becky Sue? Because that's what she knew. Her knowledge was limited. She didn't know things had changed. And every time that I practiced my faith and I looked to the provider, where is this coming from? God is sending it. Then I change and my heart changes. And here it comes. God is so smart. Have you noticed that? The God of peace sent the Prince of Peace with the gospel of peace for what purpose? To declare peace on earth. And where did we first hear that? In Luke chapter 2, verse 14. When the angels came and sang to the shepherds in the field, they said what? Peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Now that's important. Goodwill toward men. Peace on earth, goodwill. Peace brings God's will to your life. Peace brings God's will to your life. And there's always somebody that killed in an accident or has some tragedy, and they say, we don't know why God did that. But it wasn't God at all. Because God sends what? Peace and goodwill. Now, you may have some tragedy, you may have some dilemmas, but when you keep your eye on the provider. See, most people that have a financial need, they're looking at their checkbook and they're adding it and re-adding it, and they added it yesterday and it hasn't changed any, but we should probably, look at it again today. And what they do is they look so long at the provision, their vision of the God of provision and peace, they lose track of that. You see that? Turn your eyes upon Jesus. And it's not, I need some healing. It's, the healer is here. The healer he's here. It's the provider that's our focus and not the provision. Okay. Look at Isaiah 26. Let me prove this to you. Now, I won't tell you that's the easiest thing you ever did, getting your eyes off the problem and onto the provision. Somehow your mind goes right to the checkbook. There's no money in there. Or right to the pain. We have a housekeeper. Great Redeemer, we adore you, just telling you. And we have to clean off the bedside tables before she comes because it's very difficult. Okay, here's the flashlight and the box of Kleenex. And here's the box of, we call et ceteras at our house. You know what's in the et cetera box? I'll just leave that to your guess. Et ceteras. And then over here we have the nose drops. Because sometimes at midnight you need your nose drops. You may not, but I do. And we have all these various things, and we have to gather them all up and find a place for them. See, and sometimes you're so looking at your problem, you're so prepared for the problem, you miss the provider. Don't you like these? These are called pregnant pauses. I learned it from the preacher on TV. He just pauses and stares at people. And I thought, if it works for him, it works for me. That will keep him in perfect peace. You see perfect peace? That's peace beyond understanding. I mean, I'm just, what you gonna do? Oh, I don't know. God knows. Somebody said, well, you're not really worried. I said, not 1 minute. If I'm worried, I'm in trouble. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace. Here's how. Whose mind is stayed on thee because he trusts in thee. The person with perfect peace is the person whose mind is on the provider. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on God, whose mind is stayed on the provider. Perfect peace.